Here we are, live with the second Google Hangout for this month's section of Writing for Games. I have Lee and Maria here, Lee and Maria here with me, and I'll be checking occasionally to see if we have any questions posted on the watch page. We'll talk about Twine, and we'll tangent off the field of other questions once we've addressed any Twine-related questions. So to begin with, Twine. How are you getting along with it? Maria, I did get your message, and so I don't know if you have anything you specifically want to ask about.
Um, n- I'm trying to figure out how to put it on speaker so that I don't have to put it on my ear because I'm using
Oh,
my cell phone right now. Um,
well, tell you what. While you try and figure that out, I'll turn to Lee. Lee, is there anything specifically in terms of Twine you wanted to ask about or talk about tonight?
No, I'm good with it so far. I think I've got the hang of it.
okay,
It's very
that is
simple, very basic. It's using um like an Office program for the first time.
Right, right. There's a little bit of an initial learning curve, but then the basic functions of Twine are really straightforward.
Yeah.
Um, have you looked at Twee at all? Twee is the coding language that underlies Twine, and if you look at Twee, you can basically use it to extend Twine greatly. The question, of course, is how much it's worth digging into a a new programming language to supplement something whose existence is intended to allow you to do without programming. So. Uh, Let me step back to the question. Have you looked at all at Twee, Lee?
No, I haven't, not yet.
There are. I do think that for any relatively serious coding, you're better off going to something that is more established. But some of the kind of light use of Twee commands can extend Twine considerably, and there's also the ability to reformat the look freely using HTML cascading style sheets, which is nice because if you have any familiar with CSS, it just plugs right into an appropriately named Twine passage, and poof, there you go.
Right.
Um, doing okay, Maria?
yes. I'm just listening. So
Okay.
I could,
Let me know at any time if you have questions.
okay.
So what I've got here, I've got Twine open on my computer. I'm going to
Oh, good.
pull it up and screen share here to go over a few of the most common errors I see that I've seen. Some things that I see and some that I've specifically have seen with the first assignment. So people who are a little bit confused, that will give them a visual reference. So. Here we go. Can everyone actually see my desktop and the Twine window open on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is a basic Twine window, so you open the program. Something that comes up pretty much every time is Twine, the compiler. That's what you get when you go up to story and when you go up to build and do either a test play or build, which creates an HTML file you can then upload online or email or whatever. The compiler in Twine identifies how things link together the same way you do, with links between passages. It also identifies key passages by their titles. I'll just do this the lazy way. If I do this, I have created a link between first and one. Not feeling terribly creative tonight. But you see that the title bar of this Twine passage has actually changed from the special light green it was when it said start to blue. Again, now there's no start passage. We can't build the Twine. It won't play. Common errors, simple errors, can be averted and avoided if you make sure you do test play your Twines. That's true for assignment 1. It's also true in some ways, perhaps even more importantly, for assignment 3. For one thing, at that point, I'm expecting everyone to have learned from mistakes on assignment 1. So make sure your Twine is playable. Another common mistake is having a phrase like this. This will play, but it displays go to as a link to passage 1, not passage 1 itself. If you want the link to say go to 1, you need something like this, or let's compare how those look. Oops, sorry, that's the first one, the entire passage is a link. The second one, just the word 1 is a link. That's my email. Not helpful. Now, for the first assignment, you're supposed to create a branching narrative where the choices were between things that can happen and was supposed to reflect a complete plot. For assignment 3, we're talking about a conversation. That means it's really important that the options are between different things for the game or your little Twine game's protagonist. Doesn't just have to be based on your thesis unless you're working on a game for your thesis. Different things that the game's protagonist can say and not things to do. A little incidental action is perfectly acceptable, but options should be things like tell me more about the blue dragon, and not things like I go to the mountain and kill the blue dragon. Yeah. How am I doing? got a couple different passages here, or a couple different lines formatted differently. Quotes before or after the link. I'm going to bring this all up, and we'll take a look at how these lines work. And I'm going to have Twine auto-create the passages for me. Don't need this one anymore. Okay, so here we have part of a conversation between the player and the barkeep. Barkeep looks at you suspiciously. You want anything else? A couple different lines here. In these two, only the key words have been made into a link. Here I made the entire sentence into a link. I think this is generally more convenient for branching dialogue, just make the entire line into a link. Let's take a look at how I did that. Here we have what gets displayed on screen. Here we have where it takes us, where we're linking to. If you ask for an ale, this is dialogue. Ask for an ale. Yep, the bartender pours a heady dark ale into a wooden stein and places it in front of you. You quaff it and wipe your chin. Oh, really shouldn't have had that quote mark there. And edit that on the fly. Now we get something a little bit more debatable. What now, hero? So here we're breaking from the conversation, the flow of the conversation. We have kind of this narrative intrusion. You don't do this. What I did here to do is to both show you a acceptable level of action. Right, this quote mark is still there because I haven't rebuilt the thing, the twine. If we look right here, you can see quote mark's gone. But this right now is based on the same, on the previous version of the Twine. So if we want to actually see a updated version, do a new test, or rebuild the file. Incorrect quote mark's gone. But the spurious out of character comment is still there. If you want to give players an option to go back a branch point, which is what this does, it loops back. This is a very, very simple loop here. Try to keep it within the conversation itself. Back is really no better than what now, hero. Having the bartender say, anything else, would be a little bit redundant with this, but it still keeps the conversation a conversation. Say, who are you? Barkeep decides you've had too much and is cutting you off. The end. For assignment 3, you'll need to stick to 3 or fewer endings. Keep it concise. presumably in this particular scenario, players have a chance to drink as much as they want. A more complex Twine might actually keep track of how many ales the player has. That you can do that pretty easy with a variable. And you're supposed to find out about the king and the unrest in the kingdom, but I didn't write that because this is just a demo. Actually, I don't really need to restart it. I can just close this. Anyone? Maria, Lee, do either of you have any questions at this point?
No, I think I've got the gist of it.
Okay. Oh, it looks like I lost. Looks like I lost.
Maybe your phone ran out of power or something.
Yeah. Okay. So, going to go ahead and end the screen share. That's kind of obnoxious anyway. So, I'm back. Well, Lee, do you have anything you want to ask about or talk about? Because in the absence of specific questions, just running through a few of the those kind of basic things is all I really have on the agenda.
I'm in regards to Twine and the dialogue thing. I don't think it's nothing that I can't handle. So
Right.
It's the big challenge is just thinking up the whole scene of my character interacting with real life people. So yeah.
Well, and that can be a valuable challenge that working with branching dialogue, including for people who aren't working on games, forces you to think about character interactions in a way that you don't necessarily have to when you're just writing a single response script.
Yeah.
Also, that does remind me of something that may be helpful to people, that if you get stuck in terms of the concept of a scene for branching dialogue, jumping to the end, to where the player is supposed to get to, and working backwards can be a way to kind of get yourself unstuck.
Right. That's kind of what I do too. I kind of like jump between beginning, middle, and end when I'm working on something.
It's often a good technique. It's definitely with the kind of flowchart-like layout of Twine and similar tools. Roughing something out and then filling in the details like you would with the outline of a story is often a good approach. Knowing where you're starting and where you have to get to, and then filling in the middle. That depends in part on how well developed a notion you have of what the whole scene is like. But I see people get into trouble when they start and just kind of run with it, and then discover. Oh, there's Maria. Good to have you back, Maria.
Hi.
But sometimes when people start and they just kind of run with it, they'll realize they've written as much as they are required to in terms of the number of passages, but they are nowhere near completing their scene or plot.
Okay.
So, Ray, do you have any questions at this point?
Yeah, I wanted you to discuss a little bit about the project that we have to work on that's due on Sunday. If you can give us a little scenario of what you expect.
Right. You may have missed a few things that I said about that when your phone dropped out or whatever.
Okay.
But there's some things there that you might want to rewatch. But here's the short version: is you want a conversation. A conversation between two characters. It's not that it has to be exactly two, but two is the most manageable number. Normally, the protagonist of the story is the only person the player makes choices for,
Mm-hmm.
And those choices should be between different things to say, not actions to take or places to go. It's okay if there's a little bit of incidental action if it helps the flow of the conversation. But if the scene of dialogue is between your protagonist and the protagonist's best friend as they're talking about going to go look for clues, you wouldn't then have one of the options be get in the car and drive to the park where the victim was last seen. That's outside the scope of branching dialogue. In most games that have branching dialogue is only used for conversations. That's dialogue.
Okay.
And whenever there would be action, like combat or a puzzle or a scene change, and to use the filmic term, the player takes control of the character and moves around in the usually 3D environment directly. So the goal of assignment 3 is more specific than of the first assignment. Actually, I think I'm going to revise the first assignment. It used to be a very specific assignment, and I've had more problems since I've opened it up a lot more. But assignment 3 is a conversation. It needs to be a complete conversation. It does not have to be a plot central conversation. Doesn't have to be a key turning point in the story. It just has to begin, has to give the player a chance to make some meaningful decisions about what to say, and has to come to a reasonably small number of possible endings, no more than 3. Those endings should all let the story or game continue. Part of the reason for that is that, though I don't know if this always should be the rule, in most games, I think that connects to an idea in especially action-oriented games that have some branching dialogue, like action role-playing titles, that the primary part of the game is the action, the combat or whatever, and that it's okay for the protagonist to get shot down in combat, but somehow that it wouldn't be okay to say the wrong thing to a powerful crime lord and have them shoot you under the table like Han Solo. He shot first. Han shot first. Sorry. Does that help? Do you have any specific questions that tangent off of that, or anything that I need to clarify?
No, I'll go back to I was watching one of the videos and it kind of helped me to understand it a little bit. As this is all new to me, so it's kind of hard to comprehend sometimes.
Right.
I'm getting the hang of it.
It can be a lot to wrap your head around. If you aren't a gamer and aren't used to thinking in terms of stories with multiple possibilities,
Right.
it can be kind of overwhelming.
Yeah. But I'll figure it out.
Okay. And don't hesitate to contact me, after you've put in some time on it. Everyone, if you get a hold of me, the sooner the better, the more likely it is I'll be able to give you helpful feedback in a timely manner.
Okay.
So, got a little. Okay. Let me see if I can check in case anyone posted a question on the page. Loading. Okay, so no questions posted on the watch page. Well, that basically covers tonight's agenda in the absence of any other questions. Either of you have any kind of less topical questions, games to play, things you've been watching, that kind of thing. I know that
Uh,
it. Go ahead.
I've recently gotten Journey from the Full Sail library. I haven't gotten into it yet because of my schedule, but
Yeah.
I'm hoping it'll give me a bit of a insight on how to craft a a linear or branched story without the need for dialogue. I mean,
Yeah. Journey is a good example of that. Um, and the thing about Journey that I think you'll see as you play it is that, yeah, there's no dialogue,
mm,
but there is very carefully put together story design. And you might have watched the extra credits video that talks about the hero's journey in the game Journey.
yeah, yeah.
It's something else entirely when you actually play it. I mean, not dismissive extra credits, but you definitely get another experience playing
Mm,
through. Um,
mm.
among other things, the kind of passive presence of other people on their playthroughs with the minimal potential for interaction is really interesting. And there was actually a game that was brought up. It was mentioned in the context of an indie. Juegos. Uh, yeah, Juegos Rancheros. It's an Austin-based video game uh, group, and they for one of the video game sites, they do an occasional listing of indie games they're playing. There was something that looks like it might be a very small budget indie game along similar lines that basically situates the player as a stranger in an alien city and asks you to interact and make sense of things when no one speaks the language. And unlike Journey, there isn't this really clear keep moving this way kind of arc to it. Uh, so if Journey illustrates kind of mute or wordless video game storytelling in a very kind of finely crafted and conventionally paced way, this game might, and I haven't had a chance to play it yet. I don't remember the title off the top of my head. I will include it when I send out the link to this video. Uh, be a bit more like experimental film in that way. Um,
Mm.
there was a game by I forget Stephen something or other, Ink Repair, an indie creator who I quite respect, that just situates you as someone at a club scene, but does so with such wildly distorted graphics that the experience is surreal, and it's almost more like a game about what it might be like to be stoned out of your gourd at a dance club than any sort of goal-oriented or conventionally visually attractive game. You look at screenshots and it even makes sense. You can only really discern the shapes of objects in the context of the continuing scintillation of the colors. For anyone who's looking for a truly alternative experience, I'll post a link to that one as well. It had a crazy title too. It was Slaves of God or something, but it's like
Mhm.
Space Cantina, but you got some bad something or other. Whether it was sushi or acid, I don't know, but yeah.
Mm.
I always look to the most alternative and indie releases just for the inspiration. Um, as with experimental film and avant-garde art of any sort, it's less likely to be um, well as immediately appealing and commercially successful, but sometimes that's where the great commercial works that press boundaries but don't lose their audiences that's sometimes where people find their inspirations, is in the really out there, super fringy stuff that is more concerned with doing something completely different than whether or not anyone gets it.
I know. I quite enjoyed the indie stuff too. I mean, recently I just got I played Tim Schafer's point and click adventure game, and it was pretty good. I mean, the fact that he managed to build it all with Kickstarter and
Right.
uh, got get it out in the open so soon. It was pretty amazing, uh, and that's what I like about indie developed projects is that the developers, much like how filmmakers go, they can make their work without having to compromise any of their artistic integrity or creativity, thanks to some like meddling producer or publisher.
Right. Right. Um,
Mm.
whereas, you look at some of the stories, and sometimes with games that have done remarkable things, uh, you see designers and writers having to go and like wrestle with some of the people who are the money men,
Yeah.
to get things done. And it's different segments or slices of the business, and to be a consummate professional, you have to be able to work with people when you have to, and then you sometimes also have to know when it's time to do something that is much more boundary pushing, because you've got the resources or the time or the energy or whatever it is to do it. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I really feel like the next few years, like the span of the current generation of consoles, are going to be an interesting kind of rocky time. Not necessarily a terrible time to be in the industry, but that the mainstream is having to start confronting itself a little bit.
I know with all the controversy that EA has done with their product like Dead Space and SimCity, and especially how Blizzard handled their release, they've been really pissing off a lot of gamers with how they handle their product, and mostly because they're, I mean, they do it because they claim they're trying to fight piracy and all that, but you know, you and I both know that that's completely not the case, in their
Mm.
in their point of view. Uh, the publishers, they're the ones who control uh, how much publicity a game gets and how much how and whether or not they go out in the open. They're pretty much like film distributors like Fox and uh, DreamWorks, that those kind of companies. They
Yeah.
Yeah, they put like dog collars on the people who make the games, and they like put them on really tight schedules just to get the games uh, finished. And even if they're not finished, even they're only at like well, barely even passable, barely even playable stages, they still
Right.
release them out in the open. It's it's
Oh yeah.
insanity.
Well, and there's been some pushback against Steam's early access program,
Yeah.
because much more so than something like Kickstarter, where you either make the goals, and those goals that you set were realistic or not. But in theory, you do a Kickstarter, and you can say, in order to do this, I need this much money, and if you get it, you get it.
Hmm.
Early access games have helped push um, releasing, selling people on dreams, and what in many cases wouldn't even be beta level games. and then the games will only get completed if enough people buy in. Um,
Yeah.
it takes some of the worst traits of the big distributors, and suddenly, in addition to some larger titles, indie people, mid market, and some smaller folks are trying to do the same thing, and then people are getting upset. Double Fine's done well with a lot of things, Tim Schafer's company, but one of the concepts that they spun out there that had attracted a lot of attention originally was a game called Space Base DF9, something like that.
Huh.
That was a free, an open world space sim inspired by the incredibly detailed, but also rather arcane freeware indie game Dwarf Fortress. And not long ago, they announced that they were ending active, primary development on it. There might be some more bug fixes, but there won't be any expansion of major new features. And it's only got a fraction of what was basically promised. Certainly, what people who bought in were expecting it would be.
Mm.
That's a small bruise on Double Fine because they've released a number of successful games since then. I think they got a little bit far from kind of their core competencies on that one, and also were trying to use this development model that clearly did not work for them the same way that, again, because first overwhelmingly huge Kickstarter success, the way the Kickstarter for Broken Age did.
Maybe they just bit off a bit more they could chew.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they were overambitious, and I think that open access didn't help. I think that overreach, maybe with a little bit of hubris after their success, was part of the problem there.
Mm. I know.
Go
yeah.
ahead.
Sorry. I just realized that it doesn't matter how ambitious or how much heart and thought that you put into a game, how much that you aspire to be the Citizen Kane of video games, you're still going to face a whole bunch of politics in creating it, and
Yeah.
let alone distributing it. Because if there's anything that hinders from it from being made, it's usually like the publishers or the investors who who put your faith and trust in making the game successful. I mean, I think about like how Psychonauts was developed, and I played it. It was a pretty good game. I just can't beat the final level, but it had a
I
great
haven't
story.
played all the way through it myself either. So.
Yeah, it had great characters. It had a great storyline. It made me laugh, but it flopped when it was released. Because
Lee, if you're still there, I lost your voice chat, your audio stream.
Hmm.
Oh well. Uh, well, Lee, since I at least can't hear you right now, I'll kind of follow up from that. Yeah, it flopped, and one of the things that people in every niche of the publishing of the entertainment industry talk about, from traditional print publication to the movies to games to everything else, is tail. That is to say, after initial release, how well does something continue to sell? This has been a particular problem for games because games have traditionally had a technologically curtailed tail. After a point, the game simply won't run on the next generation of technology that most people have, and earlier technology becomes scarce. We've seen some improvement there, with in addition to the emulation scene, where whether it's emulating. Okay, your mic cut out. Okay, but ranging from fan emulation to increased kind of virtual machine. I think that's was Nintendo's term. But support for playing classic games from older iterations of a console franchise to things like good old games or GOG, specifically, who is now trying to be more of a direct competitor to Steam, but got started up as a way to make classic games available in a format that they'd run on contemporary computer hardware. I think the potential classic games is increasing, though it's still a little bit tricky because the hardware does keep changing, and the average player's expectations in terms of graphics and sound go up, even though there's some flex in there. Well, I'm getting some static now, Lee. I don't know if that's a good sign or not.
Yeah, my headphone just died on me for some reason, so I'm just using my laptop's microphone right now. Okay. Yeah, I think I got cut off midway while I was talking, so yeah, I don't. Yeah, sorry.
Pretty much, at least from what came through on my end, right as you were saying, Psychonauts failed, when it was released because.
Because it didn't get enough notoriety from the Raid publishing company that it was published by.
Yeah.
I'm just afraid that that same thing will happen to me. Like I probably get screwed over by some third party because they don't want to. They have so little faith in it, or they just think that what I'm doing is a waste of time, and then eventually I just go around and around, and it never gets completed. Much like how Duke Nukem Forever
right.
Happened.
Well, that is a risk.
Well,
I won't pretend that it's not. That does happen. I can't remember for the life of me right now what it was, but there was a game that was released by a small company, and they didn't pay any royalties to the basically single-handed developer of the game, and he went through a long struggle to basically get his rights back and to get them to stop selling the game that they were not paying him for. And there was a deluxe edition has been put forward after I think I don't know if it was a Kickstarter or like a I don't think it would have been GoFundMe. It would have been Kickstarter or Indiegogo, but there was like some sort of crowdfunding initiative to get the deluxe version put out, and that's actually been a success. I wish I remembered the title off the top of my head. If I can find that, I'll include the link to that as well with the archive. But you have to take risks. If you don't, then you'll just be sitting on your precious, cherished ideas with nothing to show for it. But one thing that can be a way to kind of mitigate or moderate those risks is to look at what kind of development makes sense in the situation you're in. Sometimes the same story can be told as a game a whole bunch of different ways with different requirements in terms of time and budget. And sometimes the thing to do is to create a stylish but not super fancy demo that allows you to retain control of the rights and shows off what you're trying to do. And then maybe you put that out there and it helps get you some attention. Then maybe you have to sit on the concept for a while if you get a job working on someone else's project because they liked your demo. Um, Demos are definitely big in the game scene. Much so, more so with 3D artists and people who are primarily coders. But for anyone who wants to do game design, if you can create some sort of interactive demo that gives some idea of what a concept is, uh, it's a good way to share, to kind of get some feedback on the concept and potentially to get interest, um, and also to kind of get yourself out there as a developer, writer or someone who can wear multiple hats.
Mm.
Same thing for a small project. A small complete project of some sort is, putting something out there, especially just putting it out for free, is an investment of time and energy. But it shows that you can complete a project. I've been told by people who've worked as writers that one of the things that is most prized of a writer in the kind of, especially in the mainstream of the games industry, but any time, because you're working with a team, is being able to get stuff done on time. Is it complete, and is it in before or at latest by the deadline? There's Once you're attached to a project, that's really critical. You mess that up a couple of times, you can get yourself blackballed.
Mm.
As opposed to like a screenwriter where, now if you've got revisions due on a script and you miss that, you might find that depending on the contract you signed, that someone else has been brought on to do the revisions, your share of any potential revenues has been reduced, and you're in hot water with everybody. But if you're a screenwriter, you have a chance to complete your entire script on your own timetable, hypothetically, before just turning it over to someone else. Even more so for print fiction. Well, whether or not it's in print these days, if you want a story to do well, you'd better be working with a publisher who's going to bring it out in ebook format and promote it as an ebook. But just here and there, it's different, a little bit different everywhere, but there are always these big similarities.
Right.
Well, I'm about ready to call it a night, unless there's anything else you want to bring up.
No, I'm good. Thank you for reviewing my GDD and Twine docs. So yeah, you've offered really helpful comments. I'll make some revisions, and and I'll expand on some stuff. Even though I think I filled out some of the requirements, I probably might want to add in more because there's so much that I want to
Right. One thing to remember with a game thesis is your goal is not to have all the text to be necessary for a complete published game. That's just not reasonably possible.
I know.
But working in more of the stuff that will help show how all the pieces would fit together is really important.
Yeah, as long as it gets, it gets through. The point of the whole project gets through. Then
Right.
That's all that matters. I'm assuming that you managed to get a hold of what my game is all about, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I've got a grasp on the concepts, and including that I like the symbolism and the fact that the symbolism isn't too heavy-handed.
Mm.
At least it doesn't feel heavy-handed to me, such that I think you can see different forms of readings of oppression and of power structures, different specific real-world ones, in Epsilon's story at the same time.
Yeah, it's pretty much a society where everyone's living prosperously, except but they're pretty much living in an illusion. Like, you know, you have like you're living like it's like the scenery behind them is just the background, and you knock
Right.
it over, yeah, it shows you what it's really like. So yeah, that's more or less the whole gist of my story.
Yeah, the invisible cost of the comfortable lifestyles and the illusion of it being effortless or there being no losers. Um, are you familiar off top of are you by any chance with Ursula K. Le Guin's short story "Those Who Walk Away from Omelas"?
No, never heard.
It it takes an old philosophical um, question and turns it into a really tight short story that uh, I'll take a look at it. If you just Google Le Guin, Leguin, and Omelas, Omelas, you'll find the story online.
I found it. I found it.
It kind of takes that problem and puts it in a super succinct format. Um, and I don't think that the fact that that story and that problem has been approached elsewhere in any way diminishes your particular telling of it. In fact, I found that I quite appreciated some of the twists that can come along the way, and the three endings you articulated in your first assignment, uh, because they made me think a bit of that story and of what and of the ways that wrongs can be healed or dealt with or repeat themselves. I like that.
Uh huh.
So, without digging too much into your particular plot, while we're still, recording as part of the broadcast that goes to, well, that everyone will get. Um, I think that there'll be the main thing I think you need to work on is some of the details along the way. I think
Yeah.
the overall shape is really good.
Right. Right.
Um, so I think I'm ready to go ahead and call it for the night. And Lee, as you and everyone else, feel free to contact. It's sending me an email or making an appointment to talk with me by phone or whatever. I'm here for you folks.
All right. Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.